So, okay, that's the parts we liked. Do you guys have any kind of criticisms or things you didn't really like too much about the movie, or we're probably all four of us are really are pretty hype and like clearly biased about this movie. But objectively speaking, do you guys have any sort of comments on that?
Well, for me, at the end of the movie, one thing I didn't really like was something that was part of the other Spider-Man movies. It's the fact that too many people know who Spider-Man really is. Um, a little bit of a spoiler. Aunt May finds out who Spider-Man really is. It's her nephew Peter, right? So I understand why they did it. It's kind of closely resembled to the Ultimate Universe of the comics, where almost I would say a lot of people finds out who Spider-Man really is. But I think that if they kind of kept it to just maybe Ned for now, I think it would lead to a lot more things they can do with the character in the future. They can play a few more gags with it. But I think there's a lot more they can do with less people knowing. And that's always been one of the things I never really liked about the Spider-Man movies. And I was a little bit disappointed. Once again, they can kind of play that off as, oh, maybe it's a costume I'm wearing for a school or something. But we'll have to wait and see where it goes.
I half agree with that, where it's like, okay, he could have had his secret identity kept longer from more people other than obviously Ned. But thinking about the big picture of the MCU, it seems like everyone is either known or unknown. Anyone unknown you haven't seen yet, basically, right? It also helps, I guess, it helps progress the story because you know that Spider-Man is going to be in Infinity War next summer. So it kind of gives an explanation to his aunt that he's going to be somewhere. So it kind of helped progress, I guess, for the next step of the universe, I guess.
The one thing I can say about that, in the comics, when Aunt May didn't know he was Spider-Man, it's the fact that he went on all these missions with the Avengers and everybody and never had to give that away, right? He can always use some other excuse, like a field trip, or maybe he's back with Tony Stark and doing his internship, right? But I think that by hiding it, it's just gives it a little more. It builds the character a little bit more, like that struggle of wanting everyone to know, but it's that you can't tell people because you don't want to put them at risk, and that's one of the major points of Spider-Man, to protect those around him, and the best way to protect them is by not letting them know who he is.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of the problem, right? Like, it's basically a lose-lose. Because the problem is he is 15 years old in the movie, and at some point, there are no excuses. Because you can't really make that excuse, right? Everyone knows Tony Stark is Iron Man in that world. So, if Iron Man's fighting some aliens, and your nephew is saying, hey, I'm with Tony Stark, you're gonna be freaking out. It's a lose-lose situation. In obviously the previous Spider-Man movies, not part of the MCU, when they're older, it is a little easier to hide your secret because you're not in high school and you're not a dependent of your aunt, I guess, right? I understand why they did it, but at the same time, I get why you would want to keep it a secret because it is Spider-Man. If you follow the comics, usually not many people know his identity, right?
Even in the movie, the fact that when he was sitting in the back of the car having a talk with Adrian Toomes, he said, I will kill you and your family. I don't know if it resonated with him or not, but being a Spider-Man fan, I'd be like, okay, definitely don't want anyone to know who he is, right? Because you want to protect those people. You're putting other people at risk when you don't really have to, right? Just by having that secret. So
having Aunt May know, I don't know how it endangers her from, let's say, Adrian Toomes. But the problem is, Toomes was smart enough to figure it out that it was him. The way he found out makes sense. It wasn't a stretch how he found him out, right?
It's that Batman detective skills.
Yeah, and I'm like, you're kind of like, oh my god. And that whole car scene, it was kind of tense, and I was clenching up, going, oh, only Michael Keaton can deliver this kind of thing. Yeah, it was kind of tense in that car scene.
I think that scene was literally built so it's like it makes sense that Michael Keaton or Adrian Toomes figured it out. Like the way that the dialogue worked and the way his nervousness and everything.
And
it's
the
just
story.
And even from the beginning when Peter Parker walks into what's her name? Liz's house, and you see Adrian Toomes, and remember the dude inside the theater, like, oh,
yeah,
some dude in the theater went like, oh, like it was surprising to some degree, but from that moment forward, I think that entire scene up to the part where he leaves the car was built so that Adrian Toomes figures out Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and the way like you felt like it was wrenching, I think it was intentional. It wasn't one of these, like very random, like, oh, I don't know, it's not very believable that he he figured it out, right?
The steps made sense.
Made sense, and it's a little bit fabricated, but I think it had to be, or it would have been even cheesier if he just kind of randomly figured it out, right?
Yeah.
So fair enough.
I think the one thing about that is, yes, but you gotta give him the fact that maybe he's a little bit smarter than your average bad guy, right?
Yeah.
This is based in the modern age, where everything is accessible through cell phones. So it's not like the comics where if someone finds out, you might not find out who he's related to, whatnot. But because of internet, cell phones, and whatnot, if his secret was revealed to even the lowest criminal, they could easily find out everything about him and ruin his life.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. He needs to keep his secret from the bad guys, but having, let's say, Aunt May know might actually protect her to a certain degree. We don't know, right? Obviously, we're not superheroes. Obviously, he's still young and trying to figure it out. Maybe that's part of the reason why he didn't come out in at the end of the movie with the press conference. Since there's a Sokovia Accord, you have to reveal your identity. So that actually makes sense there, to keep your identity secret.
Well, part of it too, remember how this, like in the original Spider-Man movies, and from what I can ever remember for any Spider-Man, like I think his need and his need to keep his identity secret stemmed a lot of times when either MJ or Aunt May got too close for comfort, like they got into the line of fire or very close to it. Then each time that happens, he ensures that his identity is protected. But in the confines of this movie, there was no immediate threat from the bad guy to Aunt May, and even the dangers that occurred that happened to Ned and Liz and the schoolmates. That was like other circumstances that wasn't caused by a single individual. It was just like the stone kind of blew up and then caused that, right? He figured it out. There was no imminent threat to him and his family and close friends that was a direct threat until Michael Keaton said, or sorry, Adrian Toomes said, "I will kill all your friends and family."
And
right?
I was taking that as kind of more of a scare tactic more than a actual threat.
Yeah, given the fact that that Adrian Toomes didn't really want to kill anyone at that point, right? Like hadn't gone completely bonkers and just went on a murderous and
even when Spider-Man was on the plane trying to stop Adrian from taking Happy's or Tony's gear, I guess. He never really wanted to kill anyone. He just wanted to stop Peter. I think he knew that Spider-Man could have taken all that. It didn't look like he was fully trying to kill him. Even when he collapsed that building on Spider-Man, he could have struck him many times.
Could have skewered him with his plane thing.
But he just kind of collapsed a building on him because he didn't want to directly kill him.
Time consuming though. I think
time constraints with the plane flying off and everything. So
that makes sense too. But I do understand your point. Like from what I know, from whatever I've read online, that Spider-Man's secret identity is a huge part of his lore, and them breaking that or like making it less important does kind of take away from the mythos of Spider-Man, like his story.
Yeah. Like I said, it was a lose-lose because you either follow comic books to the T or you have to fall in line with the MCU. Obviously, the MCU is not going to be the comic books. It's taking reference to the comics, right? For it all to mesh well, they had to follow MCU. So I can see why they did what they did, right?
I just really didn't like the last part about Captain America because I got trolled and I waited until the end credits and I got a response from that. And that was nothing, like nobody would expect that from a Marvel movie. So bravo.
It's funny because it's kind of like, it made me think of that Deadpool final end credit scene. The Deadpool one wasn't really a full troll. He actually told you Cable was coming. But this one was a full troll. No one expected it. That's why it was even better. It was the third cameo of Captain America's in that movie. And it was all PSA in his gross blue outfit from the Avengers that no one likes.
Well, he must have filmed him a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
And not because he's on the run right now. He wouldn't be there to film it, so it must have been filmed since the first Avengers movie.
Because the first PSA of his is like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be showing you this because I guess he's now a war criminal. But it's just funny little references to that, and that's the whole movie basically. Funny little references.
For me, there's not much I didn't like, and I'll be absolutely honest. Through this entire discussion, I had something in mind that I was going to mention, but I completely forgot about it. So, because I was like, thinking like, oh man, that part was good. This part was good. Like, what did I hate about? What did I not like about this movie? I'm like, I can't remember now. So it's probably not worth even talking about. So let's moving on.
But before we move on,
okay.
If people were expecting to hear that Iron Man is showing up too much, no. So let's just put that in the back burner right now because I think it was just the right amount of Iron Man in this movie.
I think they put all the scenes in the trailer already. So.
Yeah. Everything you saw of Iron Man in the trailer is essentially what you saw in the movie. It was just a great way to promote that it's part of the MCU. That's it.
It's also a fact that he's kind of trying to play the mentor role.
Yeah, and he played it well too.
And he literally
like,
says, like, maybe I should something along the lines of, he's trying to mentor him, and he references his own father a lot in the movie. So,
well, there's a few times like when he's talking to Peter and trying to teach him to be more mature and how to be a hero and I guess how to grow up and whatever. I kind of had a feel. It gave me some emotions there, whereas like, oh, like. He's actually really cares about this kid. He kind of plays like Uncle Ben character that doesn't die.
Yeah, fair enough.
And there was no need to reference him, I guess, because he was kind of like Uncle Ben in this movie.
You know the funny thing is? It seems like Happy Hogan plays more of an Uncle Ben than Tony Stark does.
We didn't even talk about him because Jon Favreau has not been around since, what, Iron Man 2? I can't remember if he was in 3 or not. He was so funny in this movie, and I have missed him a lot.
Talking back to Iron Man, talking about his motions, I think the best part was when he was talking to Peter after the incident with the boat.
With the ferry, yeah.
The ferry, the Staten Island ferry.
Yeah.
He was talking about that, if anything happens to him, it's on him. But if anything happens to other people, it's on Spider-Man himself.
Yeah.
I think that is sort of a great way, because the last time when you see Tony Stark really giving a crap about other people was after the Sokovia, what happened, and then he got blamed that there's so many incidents happen, and you could really tie in that emotional feeling between the Civil War movie and when he's mentoring Spider-Man after that event.
Well, speaking to that, it's like you can tell how inexperienced and how young Spider-Man is just by small little references of Peter was arguing back with Tony and saying, I fought Captain America and I basically could take him. And then Tony tells him that if Cap wanted to take you out, he could have taken you out. It shows the difference in experience and the power of the characters, and it's kind of nice. It's something small, but it kind of worked.
So this actually ties in really well what we're going to talk about next, and I just want to ask you guys, how does this movie tie into the Marvel Cinematic Universe now? Like, now clearly it's part of it, but how we're going to see Tom Holland, Peter Parker, moving forward into the next few movies coming out, especially Infinity Wars.
I think we don't really have to even like explain much with how it ties in, because it's so connected just from the first scene of the movie, because the first scene of the movie is showing the aftermath of Avengers 1. And then because we've seen Spider-Man or Tom Holland in Civil War, or Captain America Civil War, you just know he's just part of that universe now. It wasn't loosely based or loosely added to the universe. So you see that he's just fully in there now.
Well, Feige stated that he'll be in Infinity Wars 1 and 2 or whatever they're gonna name it, and then he's basically gonna be leading Phase 4 with Homecoming 2, or whatever title they choose for that one. Everything's still up in the air regarding contracts and who's gonna be continuing on with the MCU after what happens with Infinity Wars. He's gonna be a leading character for the MCU for the next little while. Once again, it depends on Sony and what they want to do. Hopefully they don't put a wrench into everything. But he's going to be the face of the MCU years to come.
At least he'll start off, because like Feige has said that after Avengers 4, it ends the 22 movie arc of this first, 10, 11 years, I guess? When 2019 is when the Avengers 4 comes out, so 11 years. I think Spider-Man will just, depending on contract, there will be another 2 Spider-Man standalone movies. At least if Sony doesn't mess it up, they can, or if they mess it up, Spider-Man can at least kind of just kickstart the next phase or the next arc of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then they'll do whatever they have to do, right?
Well, it kind of ties into the whole reference by Aaron Davis, played by Donald Glover. How you mentioned his nephew is part of the MCU, and being a comic book fan, if you don't know, Aaron Davis' nephew is Miles Morales in the Ultimate Universe, which is the Spider-Man of that universe, and he joins the 616 universe later on. So even if they decide to take Tom Holland and do something with Sony or whatnot, they can easily build upon that. I guess they do have to work with Sony in terms of contracts and what's allowed or whatnot, but they have so many ways they can go about it in the future.
Yeah, they can get around it in certain ways. And even if they wanted to maybe throw away Spider-Man, if they had to, because of this whole 2 studios sharing a character, Marvel could technically do it. Because they've done it without Spider-Man for the last 10 years. Like, they don't need him if they don't want him, right? They could figure something out. Well, they always do.
Worst case scenario, you can just have Thanos smash his skull in or something.
Yeah. It's like,
fair enough.
I'll teach you, Sony, and then they have him smash him. Like, it's not hard.
I would literally cry if that happened. But
I'll cry in hilarity. I was like, take that, Sony. I mean, Spider-Man.
It's like, if that happened, we're all gonna turn and look at each other like, clearly Sony and Marvel, something happened. Like you knew they just wrote that in.
So this brings us to the end of part 2. So please stay tuned for part 3. If you have any comments, please comment below. Be sure to like and subscribe. And yeah, we'll see you next episode.